Lawmakers returning to Capitol Hill in less than 2 weeks, facing a critical race against the clock to prevent a government shutdown before the end of September. D.C. Councilmember Christina Henderson says discussions are ongoing with congressional appropriators to avoid a repeat of the last shutdown, which cost the district nearly $1 billion in budget authority. He says he doesn't love that idea, but that's where he thinks that this is going. Do you agree with him?
I think there's a good likelihood of it being a CR again. I think part of it's just been the problem over the last almost 30 years where we haven't passed appropriations on time. And so I think it's a bad habit that we've gotten into in terms of working through that process. I'm not in favor of a CR. It's problematic. You can't plan for the year. You end up missing some very important provisions that you want to include and being able to help the military as they go out and buy spare parts. You need to be able to have appropriations to plan for that.
Well, but why not? Then why not push for something bigger? I mean, it's not just about the budget, but it's also about the rescissions package that we've talked about. I mean, there needs to be maybe some further cuts. This is the time to do that and make them meaningful and, to your point, longer lasting for planning.
It really is. It's an important part in the process. One of the things that, part of this bad habit that we've gotten into is instead of using the authorizing committees to actually go out and make the limits and the criteria and approving different programs, we've relied on appropriations to do all of that. So it ends up being the last dogfight in terms of discussion about what's the right policy, what's the right dollar amount to spend. And we're hearing some comments back and forth from some of the Democrats that, if the president's going to look at rescissions to cut out wasteful spending, that they're not going to agree to an appropriations process. So I think it's going to be a difficult September as we work through that process, trying to figure out how do we keep the government open to provide those services that we want to provide for the American people.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's move on to this, because President Trump stepped up his use of executive authority on crime. Busy day at the White House yesterday. He signed 2 executive orders, 10 a.m. yesterday, targeting cashless bail in D.C. and across the country. These orders threaten to revoke federal funding from these jurisdictions that allow this practice. The president also signing an order criminalizing the burning of the American flag, promising 1 year in jail if the act results in violence or incites a riot. Congressman, what do you make of these 2 executive orders, in particular this issue of cashless bail? This is blue cities across the country, to be clear, that have this practice in place. But what we're seeing is these recidivist criminals, it's just a revolving door in and out of jail, and nothing is changing. Now the president is threatening Chicago with the National Guard. Do you agree with that strategy and agree with the president on this?
Yeah, it's really harmful, this cashless bail process, where you end up having somebody who willingly goes out and breaks the law, and then they're not held accountable for what they do, and then basically turn back out into the streets to cause more criminal acts through that process. So I'm happy that the president's issued this focus on cashless bail, particularly for the District of Columbia. District of Columbia is special. It's not a state. It's a federal entity that's set up special territory. So federal government has responsibility. There are some home rule provisions that allows the District of Columbia to do some things, but at the end of the day, the federal government still has ultimate responsibility. And we've seen crime increase, and we want to make sure that our nation's capital is a safe place, a clean place, and it's an enjoyable place for Americans to go visit, or for people from other countries to come visit. We want to be proud of our capital city, and we want to make sure that it's safe, and cashless bail has not allowed that to happen.
Do you support the National Guard going to Chicago or New York?
That's one of those interesting things. It's a little bit different dynamic within those cities that are in a state like Illinois. But obviously there's an issue there that crime is running rampant in so many of these cities. And we need to make sure that there's good policies to protect Americans. At the end of the day, that should be the driving force, is how do we make sure that Americans are protected?
Well, if you pull federal funding from these cities, maybe the conversation will change to safety and law and order in these cities. The president also is planning to sue California over its plans to withdraw congressional lines, as well as a lawsuit on blue slipping. The president claims this century-old Senate tradition makes it, quote, impossible for him to appoint a judge or a U.S. attorney. Meanwhile, in Texas, Republicans filing 3 bills aimed at preventing quorum breaks after Texas House Democrats fled the state to avoid a vote on the redistricting map. Now, the House bill bans fundraising during a quorum break. The Senate bill vacates a lawmaker's seat after 7 unexcused absences, and the House joint resolution lowers quorum requirement from 2/3 to a simple majority. Congressman, I want to get your reaction to that, and in particular, this issue of the blue slips, because this is something that's happening in the Senate, but the president has been very clear. He is very frustrated that he cannot get, I think he's still got, 130 appointments that he needs to move through, and that's all been stalled.
Yeah, it really is. It's part of the process where the Senate's not doing its job to advise and consent, to actually make sure that the president gets the staff around them to fill the obligations that we have passed laws on. The House and the Senate have voted on different provisions that we expect the executive branch to fulfill. And without having those folks in places to address that and do those roles, it's important that the Senate doesn't slow down that process just because the president happens to be of a different political party. I mean, we've seen it, throughout the years. There's a lot of Democrat appointments when there's a Democrat president that I didn't agree with their policy, but the president needed to have their team to actually implement the policy they wanted to do. So I think it's very important that we keep a focus on let's make sure we get those appointments confirmed into the process.
Well, again, 2 more weeks. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but 2 more weeks till you go back to work.
Yeah, it really is. And there's a lot of things to do. You talked earlier in your other segment about the digital services taxes, and obviously that's something we're working on as well from a Ways and Means standpoint. Obviously, we don't want other countries going out and unfairly treating American companies. We want to make sure that there's a good process. The OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, was working on a process to address that so that we had a standard approach, but that got waylaid with some other bad taxes that they were trying to target American companies. So we've been pushing back on that as well.
Well, by the way, I know that President Trump did endorse you for re-election, sir. Congratulations on that. We're going to be watching your race and many others as well. Ron Estes, Congressman, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
All right.